Welcome back to the Dark Reading News Desk here at RSA 2023. Terry Sweeney here with Dark Reading. Joining me now is Mike Nichols, Vice President of Product Management for Elastic Security. Mike, thanks for joining us on the news desk.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to talk to you.
We are talking about the nature of threats. They're obviously shifting constantly. Why don't we begin, if you could just tell us a bit about what you're seeing as the most pressing threats that organizations are bumping up against these days.
Yeah, well, let's get a glossary of acronyms we can go through first. So
Sure.
we'll look them all up.
Of course.
But, no, it's funny. It depends on the architecture, I think. And one thing that was surprising to me is, I'm an endpoint guy. I came from endpoint security. I led product at Endgame before it joined forces into Elastic. And there, it's very mature. So we were really focused on sort of the advanced layer of attacks, memory resident attacks and exploitation. And as we shifted pretty rapidly to cloud, as everyone knows, we sort of made that massive transformation.
Sure.
We chose uptime and availability over security. We've also added some cloud security components in our product. And it's almost like the inverse of that triangle. People are now asking us about the very early, I have no visibility. Am I compliant? Are there vulnerabilities? Stuff that we were doing on traditional endpoint security many, many years ago. So on the cloud layer now, where we're really kind of talking about on the show floor today and this whole week, it's been a lot about that. How do we gain visibility into systems that are kind of hard to get into, with these containers that are running in managed Kubernetes environments? How can I understand what's happening? How do I keep that data? Because this ephemeral thing's gone in 10 minutes, and I need to know from an incident response what happened to that. But now that's gone. It's not like a laptop I can go log into. So we've been helping people with the visibility layer of threats a lot, especially in that emerging cloud environment. Is what I've been hearing more and more. And then I can throw some acronyms in to spice it up. So.
Well, let's start with the one of the most common ones, XDR, Extended Detection and Response. This is considered usually one of the major security tools in the arsenal. Everyone's definition is a little bit different. How does Elastic define XDR?
Yeah, I like to joke that maybe we were XDR before it was cool. I don't know. It's XDR to me is it's interesting, right? I think maybe the quick summary is that context is king. I used to, before I was doing this job, I used to work in security operations centers. I was in the government, and you often needed more than just one data source to tell a full story, right? You can't understand what the attacker did or where they're going with just endpoint data or just cloud data. So we always needed context of what happened at the firewall level, what happened in other areas. We never called it XDR at the time, but now I think where it's evolved. What we think about XDR is that everything for us is core of that unified data fabric. It all starts with security analytics on top of data, and then XDR to me is really adding the preventative layer at the edge. So if your edge is a laptop, if your edge is a container, a Kubernetes pod, how can I add that preventative control to that as well? So not just analytics as sort of the book report of what happened yesterday, but adding a prevention layer that actually says, okay, I can stop this problem in the future. So kind of the everything detection and response capability.
That being said, what problem is XDR solving that endpoint detection and response or EDR is missing?
Is lacking. Yeah, we actually saw this at Endgame. One of the reasons we joined forces with Elastic is that we were doing a phenomenal job at understanding threats at the host level. But then when you want to go up a layer, right, or correlate that across the rest of the host in your organization or across other data sources, especially now with so many SaaS applications, I want to know, okay, that user had a problem on that laptop. How did they get in? Well, they authenticated via Okta. Okay, well, where's the Okta data? It's not on the endpoint, right? And so all of a sudden now I need that source of information. And then the typical questions of, well, did the connection make it out of our firewall? I don't know. Where's the Zscaler data? So again, in the Endgame days, we were using Elastic to kind of host that general context. Now with the combined forces here in Elastic, we have that sort of general layer. So I think it's about providing context, providing the analyst the ability to understand, did this threat happen? And also from the prioritization standpoint, now I know not just that one piece happened, but you follow MITRE's attack framework, we can follow the entire chain and say, okay, this is an actual attack. We're seeing from the defense evasion stage to the exfil stage, and it ties together into one cohesive attack.
Let's pull the camera back just a little bit and talk about the major challenges that are associated with cloud security.
Yeah.
What do you see as the major recurring challenges there?
Yeah, we're still at that visibility gap. The ownership, I think you probably talked to many executives, many CISOs, and I asked them the question of, well, do you own cloud security? And it's like, well, it depends, right? It's still, some of it's still in the IT ops side of the house, some still in the CISO side. The logs exist in different locations. So the first step is just getting visibility of what's happening in the cloud. And then because the cloud is all about agile, rapid deployment of those systems, it's getting a sort of a firmer grasp or lockdown on even the initial instantiation. It's not about fixing the laptop after the laptop's been running, right? It's about the container being secured from the first chance it stands up. So getting that good baselining in place, hardening it so that it doesn't change off that baseline, checking for vulnerabilities. That's really the part that we see significantly challenged people with, or having challenges with now. And then, of course, there is a whole adversary attack surface later, but they're really still at that ground level right now. How do I ensure that I can see what's happening? How can I secure it on the baseline?
In that vein, why is application security such a high priority within cloud management? Are we trying to address the most sort of fundamental level of traffic or of the services that are traversing it? Help us understand that.
Yeah, I think one way to look at it is that what the cloud has allowed us to do, especially when you move into the things like Kubernetes, it's allowed us to get much more homogeneous and sort of granular in what these systems do. So instead of having a monolithic server that runs a million different things that is hard for me to kind of keep control of and understand what it's operating, I now have these individual microservices that I can operationalize and manage, and that allows me to put stricter controls on it because I know, okay, this pod does this thing and this thing only. When it tries to do something else, I know that that's a violation of what is of activity. I can get better behavior analytics, better anomaly detection that way. And so on the application layer, that means that I've sort of typically narrowed each of these pods down to a single application. So I can understand what that app's supposed to be doing, compare with what it really is doing. And also it allows me to more periodically check in that it is, as mentioned earlier, at the right compliance state. Doesn't have any vulnerable issues with it. I mean, not to ambulance chase for a minute, but look at like Log4j. How do I know that Java class was invoked? How do I know that it was invoked on a system that had a vulnerable kernel at the same time? Adding that correlation to it so that I'm not chasing. When Log4j was made public, so many customers all of a sudden had these rule sets in place looking for it, and now you have all these alerts, but the system's been patched, right? So then there's also the context of, is the kernel also vulnerable at the time of this attack took place? So I think it allows us to get much more granular and focused on our control.
Curious, in your conversations with CISOs, what's top of mind for them? Just curious if they're maybe more worried about the economy, about AI, something else.
I was laughing walking around the show floor this week. I feel like so many teams had this great strategy on the whiteboard of here's what we're going to talk about at RSA, here's our plans. And then a couple weeks ago, there's these announcements and everyone just scratched it out and wrote AI. And you literally see like masking tape of AI on everyone's booth now. It's definitely a top of mind conversation point. It is the promise of democratizing and expanding your team, right? Security is by design. It's sort of been stuck in the IT world. That already is a narrow amount of people. You add on top of that this security layer of expertise. It continues to narrow the skills gap challenge we all deal with. So AI has this promise to it of allowing us to have more people be in security, right? Providing more context, and that's amazing. We're in the early days. There's still a question of efficacy. There's this question of, is it valid on the information it provides you? There's a question of cost, which is also at the moment. So that is a question we keep getting, and I think, we've always been a big proponent of accelerating workforce with automation as we can. I don't believe at all in eliminating or downsizing. I think you have to have that business expert in the team. But what AI is going to allow us to do is to provide more domain experts, not architecture experts. I don't have to be, or even vendor experts, which becomes worse. Certifying you on a vendor. Hopefully, you don't have to know that anymore. You just ask a certain question. So that's been top of mind, definitely on the AI side. And then we also hear, the sort of challenge of, as we mentioned earlier with cloud, like, I don't know who owns this, and I don't know how to start to secure this thing, right? Mm-hmm. It's now where my traditional hosts were, 10 years ago. Now I have the cloud, and I don't know what's out there. I don't know what's been spinning up. Help me get control of that system as well. I feel like I just got a lockdown on my traditional hosts, and all of a sudden they're back to the ether now. So.
All right. Well, Mike, you've given us a lot to think about with regard to cloud security, XDR, and now AI. Thanks so much for joining the Dark Reading News Desk today.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
We've been talking with Mike Nichols of Elastic Security. This has been Terry Sweeney for the Dark Reading News Desk. Thanks for joining us for this segment. We'll see you next time.